So in my last video, I talked about the whole stereotype of the grumpy sound engineer. We've all experienced this kind of person, the kind of person who just seems like they hate their job, they don't want to be there, they're getting agitated and annoyed at every little thing and taking it out on the musicians or other people involved in the show. They're never responsible for anything, it's all everyone else's fault all the time. Most of us will have experienced this kind of tech. I know I certainly have before, being a musician, playing on stages and playing gigs. One thing I didn't touch upon in my previous video, in that video I talked about the kind of things that can lead, or at least I think can lead, to a person becoming that grumpy sound engineer. One thing I didn't touch on was the whole idea of working breaks. And this will vary depending on where you live. Obviously, I'm talking about my experiences here in the UK and UK employment laws. And it's different if you're working as an employee for an employer or you're self-employed like I am as a sole trader. If you're self-employed, then in a lot of scenarios, it's really up to you. Say you're running your own business, it's kind of up to you when you take your working break. If you're working as an employee for an employer, say your typical kind of 9-to-5 job, normally sort of somewhere like smack bang in the middle of the day around lunchtime, you're going to have a lunch break. Usually sort of every 4 hours you should be having a working break. Quite often in the live events industry, also in recording studios, working as a studio engineer, but I'm mostly talking about live events here in this video. But some of these things will relate to studio work, but quite often, in live events, you don't get any kind of break, or it's merely a case of, just finding time if and when you can to take a break. And often that won't be sort of all in one chunk. You might get like 5 minutes here or there, like if you smoke, to go and take a smoke break or whatever, quickly go and grab a bite to eat or whatever it might be. You rarely get like a designated break time. This is different in some other countries from what I'm aware of. Like I know some places in Europe where maybe there's like stronger union representation for technicians in the industry, where under union rules, any employers employing like self-employed technicians, they will have to abide by union rules that will stipulate that the techs have to have a break, whether it's at a certain time or so many hours into their working day, and it will be a break of a certain duration. In my experience, that's just not a thing like anywhere here in the UK. I've never come across that, and it's a shame. I don't think things should necessarily be that strict, because I think just the nature of live events, it's quite difficult to program like a fixed break into an event. But at the same time, I think, again, in my experience, like there's never any consideration by any promoters or event organisers or music venues. There's never any consideration for the technicians and factoring in a break during their working day. And it can be difficult. Say, working as an in-house venue technician, if you're typical like small venue kind of gig where you're arriving like sort of mid-afternoon, load in is a little after that, and then you've got sound checks, and then the gig happens, and then after that you pack down and go home. Your working day might start at like 2 or 3 o'clock, and then you're finishing somewhere around 11 or midnight. It's difficult. It's already past lunchtime. Obviously there's dinner time to consider, but dinner time, say between 6 and 8 o'clock, that's like during the middle of your gig. You can't just in the middle of the gig be like, well, yeah, the sound engineer's taking a break now, so the show's just going to stop for half an hour. It's just not realistic or practical for events to work like that. So I don't think it should necessarily be that strict, but I do think there should be more consideration by people putting on live events to factor in breaks for the technicians working. After all, alongside the musicians, if you didn't have any technicians, like you've literally got no show. If there's no one to do the sound, the show's not happening. The same as if there aren't musicians on stage, you've not got a show. So yeah, I would love to see more consideration by event organisers and music venues to factor in breaks for workers. And I think, you know, that can have quite a mental impact over the years when you're having to deal with that day in, day out during your working life. From my personal experience, it can often make you feel a bit invisible and not really considered by anyone. And it quite often is quite a lonely role, particularly working in small venues, you know, which I've done many years of, especially as I was starting out. I was working, you know, in little local music venues, and you're working on your own. You're the person in the corner, in the little sound booth. You often can feel quite invisible, and you're very separated from any of the other workers, the bar staff, the venue management. Like, you're not necessarily interacting with them a whole lot. There's that separation between you and the musicians on stage and the audience. So it can often feel a little bit lonely. And then, yeah, when you're just there kind of slogging away all day with no break, or you might get a break if there's, you know, a bit of downtime, which sometimes there can be, and sometimes in bigger live events like doing festivals or, you know, one-off outdoor events, stuff like that, there can be a lot more downtime. So you sort of get the opportunity to have breaks then, but again, with no sort of real schedule when it comes to breaks, it can be a weird thing, because if you do have downtime, but say you have like an hour or so where you're just sat around, you're really bored and you're doing nothing, and then you have 7 hours of just being flat out on your feet, rushing around, not stopping at all for a moment. That's not the same as you know, having a proper break in the middle of your shift. So yeah, I think this can have quite a profound mental impact, and it does when you're working. I'm sure, you know, if you're a technician yourself, whether it's sound or lighting or whatever it might be, you know what this can feel like when you don't get a break. And some people, you know, cope with it better than others. And I know plenty of people working in the industry as techs, they don't really mind, and they just see it as the nature of the job. And to a degree it is, because like I explained earlier, you know, there's only so much you can do about fitting in a designated break time if you're organising an event. But I do think there could be more that could be done to make that happen, and it would just make techs kind of feel more acknowledged and considered, and it would lead to, you know, it would help kind of take the load off a bit and make the day a little less stressful, especially when it comes to eating and having a proper meal time and being able to actually sit down and enjoy your food, rather than, you know, quite often for myself, I'm sat there eating my dinner in the middle of a band playing on stage, and you know, that's a little bit ridiculous when you think about it. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this, especially if you are a tech yourself, what your experience is, depending on where you're from. Yeah, sound out in the comments down below. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel, that helps me out. And I'll see you again in the next video.